I had always been drawn to the mysterious allure of old houses, and when I moved into the rambling Victorian near campus, I thought I had found the perfect student dwelling. Little did I know, the shadows that lurked within those creaky walls held a terror beyond my wildest imagination. My roommate, Jake, seemed like an average guy at first, a laid-back student who enjoyed late-night talks about life, philosophy, and our dreams. Yet, as the semester progressed, so did the darkness that seemed to envelop him. Late one Thursday, after a particularly stressful week of exams, Jake invited a group of friends over for a wild party. The house pulsated with music and laughter, the walls seemingly alive with the vibrations of 100 conversations. But as the night wore on, I noticed something unsettling about Jake's demeanor. His eyes, once vibrant and full of life, were now vacant, haunted. In the dim light, I approached him, concern etched across my face. He smiled, a twisted expression that sent shivers down my spine. "Just need to blow off some steam," he muttered, his words laced with a strange intensity. The night took a turn for the worse when Jake, fueled by a cocktail of substances and stress, spiraled into a terrifying episode. His laughter turned maniacal, and his gaze grew distant, as if he were lost in a dark labyrinth of his own mind. The partygoers scattered, leaving me alone with a roommate who seemed possessed by some malevolent force. Desperation etched my face as I tried to reason with him, but his responses were nonsensical, a twisted stream of consciousness that hinted at a mind on the brink of collapse. Fear gripped me when Jake's eyes locked onto mine, devoid of recognition. In that moment, I realized I was no longer dealing with the person I thought I knew. Panic set in as he advanced, the air thick with an otherworldly tension. In a surge of adrenaline, I bolted for the front door, my heart pounding in my ears. I stumbled onto the front porch, gasping for breath, only to be met with an eerie silence that hung over the neighborhood. Then, from behind me, a guttural scream tore through the stillness. I turned, my eyes widening in horror. Jake stood at the doorway, his face contorted in a grotesque mask of rage and madness. As the seconds stretched into an eternity, Jake's features shifted, his eyes returning to a semblance of normalcy. Confusion flickered across his face as he looked at me, seemingly unaware of the chaos that had just unfolded. Weeks passed, and Jake's mental state continued to unravel. The once charming house became a battleground for his internal demons. Sleepless nights were punctuated by his haunting whispers and the unsettling creaks of the house settling into the weight of its own secrets. One fateful night, as I lay in bed, a chilling realization washed over me. The house was feeding off Jake's deteriorating sanity, amplifying the darkness within him. I had to escape the clutches of this malevolent dwelling before it consumed us both. In the quiet hours before dawn, I packed my bags, leaving behind the shadows that clung to the corners of that cursed house. As I stepped into the cool, night air, a sense of relief washed over me, but the memory of Jake's haunted gaze lingered. The House of Shadows had claimed its victim, but I had emerged, scarred, but alive. As I walked away, I glanced back one last time, half expecting to see the twisted figure of my former roommate in the window. In the closing moments of my escape, I felt a whisper on the wind, a faint echo of the tortured soul that still lingered within those walls. The house had tasted blood, and its hunger was far from sated. Advice. As I share this harrowing experience, remember that our mental well-being is fragile. If you sense a friend or loved one struggling, reach out, lend a listening ear, and encourage them to seek professional help. The shadows within the mind can be just as ominous as those in old houses. It was a gloomy autumn when I moved into an old Victorian house nestled at the edge of town. The rent was affordable, and the charm of the place had convinced me to overlook its slightly eerie atmosphere. Little did I know, my decision to live there would lead me down a terrifying path. My housemate Richard seemed normal at first, a quiet guy in his 30s with a reserved demeanor. He kept outdoors, often locking himself in his room for days. I'd hear strange murmurs through the thin walls, like he was engaged in sinister conversations with an invisible companion. As weeks passed, a disturbing pattern emerged. Richard's comments became increasingly cryptic. He'd mention a presence in the house, warning me to be cautious. His unsettling laughter echoed in the corridors at odd hours, leaving an indelible chill down my spine. I attributed it to the stress of his job, but there was an underlying menace to his behavior that I couldn't ignore. One night, the air turned thick with an unidentifiable scent, a pungent mix of chemicals that seeped into every corner of the house. I confronted Richard, who dismissed it as a leaky gas pipe, but my instincts screamed otherwise. I began noticing strange stains on the floor of the basement, dark, viscous, and inexplicable. Something sinister lurked beneath the surface. As the months rolled on, Richard's behavior escalated. His eyes, once dull, now gleamed with a manic intensity. He'd mutter about a malevolent force gaining strength, taunting me with veiled threats. The atmosphere in the house grew oppressive, as if an unseen entity fed off our fear. One evening, I returned home to find a crude drawing on my bedroom door, a demonic figure with hollow eyes, resembling Richard in an unsettling way. Fear clenched my chest as I rushed to confront him. His laughter echoed through the halls, a macabre soundtrack to my escalating paranoia. The breaking point came one stormy night. A flickering lamp in the hallway cast eerie shadows as I stumbled upon Richard, conducting a bizarre ritual in the basement. Jars filled with strange substances lined the shelves, and in the center of the room, an old book lay open, pages fluttering in an otherworldly wind. His eyes locked onto mine, revealing a madness that transcended the boundaries of sanity. Panicking, I demanded answers. Richard's voice, now distorted, revealed a horrifying truth. He had awakened a malevolent entity that thrived on fear and suffering. I was a pawn in his sick game, a vessel for the entity to feed upon. The air grew colder as the room pulsated with an otherworldly energy. In a moment of desperate clarity, I sprinted for the front door, the house itself seeming to resist my escape. The oppressive force clung to me as I stumbled onto the rain-soaked streets, the shadows of the Victorian house looming like a malevolent specter. The story doesn't end there, for the advice I offer is simple but crucial. If something feels off, it probably is. Darkness can reside in unexpected places, lurking behind the facades of normalcy. Don't dismiss the signs, those subtle shivers down your spine, the whispers in the air. Sometimes, the scariest stories are the ones that play out in the house next door. So, dear listener, be vigilant. The line between the ordinary and the sinister is thinner than you can imagine. I always thought living with roommates would be an adventure, a chapter of my life filled with laughter and shared memories. Little did I know, this chapter would unfold into a spine-chilling tale that would forever change how I view the safety of my own home. It all began when I moved into this old, slightly decrepit house. The rent was cheap, the location ideal, and my two housemates seemed friendly enough. But there was something about Michael, one of the housemates, that set an uneasy feeling in my gut. He was reclusive, hardly seen during the day, only emerging at night. His girlfriend, Emily, was equally enigmatic, with hauntingly quiet movements that sent shivers down my spine. The first signs of unease manifested in peculiar behaviors: doors left slightly ajar, eerie whispers echoing through the halls in the dead of night, and personal belongings subtly rearranged. At first I dismissed these occurrences, chalking them up to forgetfulness or the quirks of communal living. But as days turned into weeks, the unsettling nature of our house intensified. Strange symbols appeared on the walls, inconspicuous but undeniably unsettling. I found myself waking up to see them scrawled in the dead of night. The air seemed to carry an unnatural heaviness, a foreboding weight that loomed over the house. One night, I decided to investigate further, spurred by an increasing sense of paranoia. I crept down the creaking stairs, heart pounding in my chest. I found Michael and Emily in the dimly lit living room, fixated on a collection of old photographs. As I edged closer, I realized they were pictures of me, captured without my knowledge. Panic gripped me, but before I could react, they turned, their eyes gleaming with an eerie intensity. I fled to my room, barricading the door as fear flooded every inch of my being. The following days were a haze of paranoia and fear. I reported the occurrences to the landlord, and the decision was made to evict Michael and Emily. But as they left, a chilling revelation surfaced. A hidden room concealed within the house, a chamber of eerie mementos, a shrine to their obsession with me. As I stood in that room, the air heavy with their unsettling energy, I realized the magnitude of their twisted fixation. They had planned something unspeakable, something that made my blood run cold. My advice? If something feels off, don't ignore it. Your safety is paramount. Sometimes the horrors lie closer than you can ever imagine, lurking behind the facade of everyday life.